Hi, it's Isaac Nidra. We're going to talk about how to film an on-camera interview. If you're a mass communication student at SFA, you'll be doing this about 2 or 3 times a week at times during your semesters. And this is something that is important to master because there's a lot of probably 4 or 5 things that every student seems to get wrong in their early part of their career. So the goal here today is to save you some of that heartache. If we can get some of those things figured out early on, your packages will be fire from the beginning. So let's talk about why we do interviews. The point is that every TV package that you create, and there'll probably be 2 to 3 minutes at first, and maybe even shorter as you go on, as you start doing them more frequently, is anchored by an interview. So the point is that even if you don't show everything that you get from your interview on camera, you're going to get information from it. So if I'm doing a package on the Nacogdoches police, I'm going to go talk to a Nacogdoches police officer. A lot of that information that I get from that I'm going to use in my package, even if I'm not quoting him directly. But then I'm going to find a couple sound bites, and those sound bites are going to be kind of what string together my narration. So that's kind of where you'll use these TV packages. So we'll talk a little bit about the technique, but we need to remember that the primary focus of an interview is to get information. If you can get the information that you need, then you're great. Sometimes there will be a package that doesn't even use a soundbite. But the goal is to also find 2 or 3 sound bites that you can use to really make your package kind of stand out. But let's talk about the framing, because that's the most important part. And probably the thing that people get wrong the most frequently. So what you're going to want to do, and we'll show an example here in a minute, you want to make sure that you find a background that is relevant to the subject that you are interviewing. So if I am interviewing a police academy or a police person from Nacogdoches, I'll probably want the police headquarters building, a squad car, something that is relevant to their profession in my background. The important thing is that you don't want to find a clean slate. People have this habit, maybe it comes from what they see in portraits, but this is not a portrait, of finding a clean background, something white, something gray, backing them up against it and trying to, take their shot right there. And you don't want that. You actually want a background that is interesting and relevant. And obviously the focus is on the subject, but you want the background to have some kind of relevance. So, important thing to do is to have your subject stand on one side of the frame, and they're going to look across it. And again, we're going to have an example in just a second. And the idea there is that your subject is not looking at the camera, they're looking at the person they're speaking to, but it gives kind of this sense of a balanced frame. And that's pretty important. So let's look at an example here of a person on camera. So as you can see in the frame shot here, you have just enough headroom, and you want to have the person on one side, so just a little bit off center and looking across the frame, and that's what balances your shot. People will tend to want to look straight at the camera. You got to stop them if they try to do that, because that's not what you're trying to accomplish. People are going to be out on this side and looking this way, and you can't have that either. That balance shot is what you get, that balancing effect by following the way their eyes look. So at this point, you want to white balance your camera. Even if you've been shooting other footage in the area, and you probably will have if you're doing a package, you want to re-white balance your camera when you get into a situation where you're about to shoot someone on camera, because that is the color that you probably will not be able to adjust post-production. So once you have your shot framed and the person is in position, that's where you'll instruct them to hold up a white sheet. You'll focus in on that white sheet, and that's how you get your white balance effect. And that's kind of what we have here in this demonstration. Make sure that you do all the framing first, but with one exception, because there's one thing that you want to do early when you're first setting up, but then you want to do again to make absolutely sure you get it right, because this is the other thing that nobody seems to get right early on. Your camera level needs to be level with the eyes of your subject. The eyes of your subject are ultimately what you're looking at for this interview. You're not above them and you're not below them. You're on their level. And that's the important part of this aspect of objective journalism, is you're not creating some kind of cinematic effect like you might see in propaganda, where someone that a campaign video where you're looking up at the subject, or a movie or something like that where you're looking down at the subject. The idea here is that in your package, you are equal with them. If it's a 7-foot basketball player and you need an extension on your tripod, sometimes you can be creative and find a hill. But the idea is that you want to make sure that you're always at their level. Finally, and maybe the most importantly, someone's used the equipment before you and someone's going to use it after you. Clean up the equipment. Because what you're going to find out after probably 2 weeks of doing this is that things are going to be missing. You're going to check out equipment after hours and you won't be able to go back and get it corrected, and the last person didn't put something back correctly, and that can really mess up your package. So it seems really insignificant, but if everyone followed this rule, it would make life a lot easier for everybody. And now, the reality is that this isn't going to make you an expert the first time, but if you can follow these 4 or 5 guidelines, it'll make this whole process a lot easier. I'm Isaac Niedrauer. I hope you shoot excellent packages, and best of luck this semester.